you all for joining us today. I'm here with my brother Tavis from Gentleman's Quest of Tampa. Interested to know, man, can you give the audience just a little bit of insight about what inspired the founding of GQ Tampa and what the organization's core mission is?
So, Gentlemen's Quest of Tampa Inc. is a program that we created to serve Black and Brown youth across Hillsborough County, Florida. It started when I was an administrator in a local high school here, and I was hired by a Caucasian lady that had a passion for serving all children. But the school that she was the principal at, that I got hired to work at, she said there were a lot of kids that were being suspended and expelled from that school for various reasons, and many of those reasons had nothing to do with learning. But the kids were getting suspended and expelled. And on my first day, she said, "You're going to be the solution to this problem. You are going to create something that keeps our Black kids in school." And Gentleman's Quest is what I created. Initially, it started as a school-based club, and then it kind of expanded into now it's a countywide program.
Hmm. That is awesome. That is awesome. One thing that we often hear in this space is oftentimes people focus on empowering the youth, but I know your empowerment looks a little bit different than just that the average individual. So when you hear the term empowerment, I'm curious to know what context does that mean to you when it comes to engaging with the youth, young people of this generation?
So we have so many kids that either don't have a role model or don't have a positive role model, or they're looking to the streets or looking to celebrities as the example of what they are to be and become. And to me, I've always believed that it's important to give them positive local examples of what success looks like. It is always my goal to bring before our youth constant examples right here in their city of what success looks like within the Black community. And I say within the Black community, but I don't want to limit it, because I don't mean that success will look any different between Blacks and our counterparts. But what I mean is a lot of these inner city kids don't see success. And if they don't see it within their community, they begin to think that it's not obtainable for them, or they begin to think that it's out of reach for them. And so the more we get to bring our kids, or bring examples and role models and industry professionals that look like them in front of them, the more attainable it becomes, the more real it becomes. And so that's what empowerment means to me. It's about getting them to think differently about their life and their future. In that example, I'm talking about the industry professionals, but we're always trying to expose our kids to new things, not just with the guest speakers, but also with the experiences we create for them. Also, with always pushing and challenging them to achieve more, to achieve better, to do better, because there is so much more that lies on the inside of them.
I wholeheartedly agree, man. That's one thing I know we generally had in common, man. Seeing is believing is a huge component. I know attending at HBCU, coming from a city such as Asheville, North Carolina, it blew my mind to be able to see so many professionals that look like myself that are thriving, and it really was inspirational. So I can definitely relate to that. But my next question is, what are some key programs that GQ Tampa offers?
Our program has three main components that we call programming, for lack of a better word. The first one is our community-based program, in which we take a cohort of 25 kids every year. We use a iron sharpens iron model, so they're not all from the same demographics. They're not all low income. They're not all high income. They're not all single parent. They're not all parents deceased. They're not all parents incarcerated. It's all of the above. And that way it's literally a conglomerate of iron sharpening iron, because everybody's in there. They're not even all from the same school. And so when they come in this community-based program, we meet once a week religiously. I always say if school is in session, that means we're meeting this week. uh, and so they're assigned a success coach as soon as they join that program. The success coach week one meets with them to create three goals that have to be accomplished by the end of the school year. The three goals align with what we call the ABCs of GQ. That's academics, behavior, and college and career readiness. Behavior doesn't just mean you're going to stop acting up in class because everybody might not be that kid. Behavior could also mean, do you have the ability to stand up in front of an audience and speak professionally or use correct grammar or not chicken out? You get what I'm saying? That's also behavior. It's a lot of the social and emotional stuff as well. So they create 3 goals that the success coach works to progress monitor with them throughout the course of that school year. In that community-based program, we also have a therapist that's on site that one day a week. So for the kids that have self-identified that they have anger management issues, or we have a couple of kids whose father is deceased, we have a couple of kids whose father is in prison. And so sometimes these kids identify that they may need to see a counselor, completely on us. We also offer tutoring. We have tutoring in person on those nights, but we also provide one-on-one tutoring based on the specific needs of a kid. So if a kid is failing chemistry or physics or Spanish, then there is a company that we use that we pay directly so that that kid can receive the services that they need. And they can either go in person or do it on Zoom virtually. Everything in that program is free. College and career explorations, everything that they do is free. But the idea is we don't want the parents to ever have to decide between paying a light bill or allowing their kid to go on a college tour, or can I afford a personal tutor, or do I have to pay my mortgage? I don't. We want to take those excuses away from the parents so that nothing stands in the way of those kids. In addition to the community-based program, we also have a site-based program. The site-based program, we have success coaches that go to traditional and non-traditional school sites just to do life skills lessons. They're not getting the field trips in the same way that the community-based program is. They're not getting the tutoring services and things like that, but they're getting life skills lessons. We pride ourselves with focusing on mostly non-traditional school sites, the jails, the detention centers, the drug treatment centers, for kids that have been removed from the traditional school setting, but they still have to be educated. I mean, the government, we're still responsible for their learning needs. And so the way I see it is, if somebody doesn't get into those sites to work with those kids to make sure that when they go back to a traditional school setting or when they come back into mainstream society, they have a renewed mindset, then we're going to have a continued issue with that kid. And so it's not a full year program. We work with that site to develop a contract. And in the contract, the site kind of determines how long we can stay there. So some might be 6 weeks, some might be 12 weeks, but then the success coaches come in every single week and they're doing a lesson, whether it's on goal setting or taking accountability or respect, or values, or how to identify healthy relationships. Those are some of the topics that we focus on in our sessions. And then the third program that we have is our STEM camp. We call it STEM Quest. We really pride ourselves with exposing our kids to STEM fields. Every year, we're creating something that I promise you is not like anything that's out there. It's a 3 or 4 week camp. Some years we do it for 3 weeks, some years we do it for 4 weeks, but every year we change the focus, and the kids really have to use whatever the concept is to solve a problem in the local community. So we've done everything from last summer, we did energy efficiency. The year before that, we did drone technology. The year before that, we did robotics. The year before that, we did architecture, blueprint design, and industrial planning. The year before that, we did carpentry, plumbing, and electrical. And then the year before that was our very first year doing the STEM camp, where the kids had to build their own computers from scratch using the Raspberry Pi system. Every year we change the focus so that even if we get repeat students, no one gets bored with the content. They're always learning something new. They're always being challenged. And the parents are always amazed, because the very last day we do something called the community showcase, where every student has to do a formal presentation. So they're having to physically present this capstone project that they spent the last 3 or 4 weeks building. And they have to do it speaking with correct grammar without saying or you know what I mean, or like. So those are our programs.
Man, I love it. And this is exactly why I'm a fan. And I'm glad we're having an opportunity to highlight the great work that your community is doing. Heard you talk about the academics. I heard you stress the consistency. Heard you talk about the mental health and the innovation. I love what I'm hearing because you are continuously keeping the youth engaged. You all are consistently being stewards of developing them and also helping them solve problems within their own community, right? So helping them learn to be solution oriented versus problem oriented, which is a huge component when it comes to this generation. So again, man, flowers to you all. Kudos for everything you're doing. Now, I heard you also mention and emphasize that you all are it's very important and vital for you all to go into the non-traditional locations to offset the recidivism. Can you talk a little bit more about why you are so passionate about that and maybe some things that you've seen through your interventions?
It's kind of interesting because until I started working in an inner city school as an administrator, so I've always worked in inner city schools, but when I was a teacher, I was kind of just focused on my classroom and I was oblivious to anything that happened outside of my classroom. But once I became an administrator, first as an assistant principal and now as a principal, it it opened my eyes to how much is really happening to these kids or with these kids. And so much of it is outside of their control. But the number of kids that are being removed out of the traditional school setting to go to these non-traditional schools, and not always just because somebody brought a gun to school or something. That's what you hear about on the news, but you don't hear about a kid that was a sexual predator, or you don't hear about a kid that was literally addicted to some drugs or something and they're court ordered to be in a residential drug treatment facility. And so sometimes people forget about that. Even though these kids may have certain issues, they're still a kid, and we still have to provide certain levels of education and treatment and services to them so that preferably they can be productive members of our community once they're brought out of this situation. And so we've seen tremendous success in our community-based program. Specifically, we have a 0% recidivism rate, which means any kid that comes into the program, regardless of whether they've been a part of the DJJ system, the Department of Juvenile Justice system, or not, they don't go back. And so that's huge for us. Uh, and so I kind of tout that. Now, in all of our programs, whether it's that program or any of the other programs, we track their immediate learning. So no matter what the concept is, we have them do pre and post tests or exit surveys so that we can see how much they're gaining from this particular session. We try to make our sessions discussion oriented because so many of these kids don't have opportunities to engage with someone that will listen to them. So, and specifically in the African American community, we've been socialized to not even speak up, not to share our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions. And if we do, we're considered to be weak. We're considered to be all of these things that we may or may not identify with. And so we try to create a safe place where kids know, where people know in general, that you have a voice and we want you to use it. And you should be able to say whatever it is that you want to say as long as you're honest and respectful.
That's it right there, man. That takes me back to a story with my father, man. I actually I was a very blunt and transparent kid, and I remember there was a time I was telling the uncle I wasn't too fond of him. And before I got popped, one of my uncles pulled my dad aside and said, "Listen, he's being honest and he's being transparent, and he's not being disrespectful. So don't punish him, or you're gonna essentially quiet his voice." So I love what you said, right? Allowing them to be heard out, knowing that their voice does matter. One thing we're really huge on here within Roots Mentoring is the restorative justice circles, right? Being able to create an equitable space where they can be heard out. Now, one thing you mentioned, you said they are still a kid, regardless of the trauma, regardless of the trials, the tribulations, anything of that nature. And 9 out of 10 times, they were shown or taught that this behavior is correct. So now you're, kind of redeveloping their mindset to understand that, hey, just because I saw something, I grew up being accustomed to this, doesn't mean it's right. And honestly, a lot of adults still aren't able to grasp that thought process, right? So you're being a great steward and getting them on the front end to be able to help redefine their trajectory. And again, I love every bit of it. Now, I'm curious to know if you might have a specific success story about a young person that you have worked with that really helped transform them to now become a community leader or advocate.
Mm. So the first person that comes to mind is a kid named Jose who was um he was so prior to him being a part of the program, he got in a lot of trouble in school. He was not afraid to cuss a teacher out. He was not afraid to fight. Um that was just how he was taught to deal with things, whether somebody physically said it was okay or whether he saw his older peers, siblings, family members do it as well. He was just not afraid to do it. And I remember the school trying everything. I remember they put him in school suspension. I remember they put him in out of school suspension. I remember they did the detention. They tried different things and nothing worked. And I remember saying to them that punishment consequences are supposed to be transformational, right? They're not really supposed to be punitive. A lot of times we make them punitive, but the idea behind punishment is that it's supposed to change behavior. And if it doesn't change behavior, we kind of really need to reconsider what are we doing, or what consequence we're providing because it's not working. um, and so for this particular kid, for Jose, it wasn't until we put him in GQ that his whole life changed. And honestly, this was at the beginning of our program, and so we didn't know if it was going to work or not. All I knew is that the school wasn't working. They keep suspending him out of school and it's not working. So we put him in GQ and he became our most committed person. He wouldn't miss, we could have did any field trip, we could have had any session, he was not missing it. And back then, to even be able to attend our session, they had to bring a progress report every week. And so we served a meal. So to come into the session, you had to prove you had no D's or F's. And if you had D's or F's, you couldn't come in. You had to go to tutoring back then because we had a shorter amount of time. And so he worked his butt off to make sure he never had D's or F's. And fast forward now, we have this kid, Jose, is living in Texas. He's married. He has with his wife, they have a daughter. He's an active member of the United States Marines, and he's a police officer in the Marines. And so that's huge. That's huge to see that. So
Awesome,
it's
man.
a testament to what we do, in my opinion. It's a testament to what we do.
100%. The same child that somebody would have counted out now is going to be a prime example for developing the next generation as well. And again, it had a lot to do with you, our hands. So I know I found myself as a youth writer being able to sleep well at night, reflecting on some of those Jose's, some of those youth as well. But I'm curious to know, just from a personal perspective, again, you have a life outside of this as well as a lot of these other executive directors do. How do you go about managing and juggling, right? Your personal as well as the business component when you really do have a soft spot for these youth in your hearts as well, too.
Oh, with a family, I find it to be incredibly important to manage your time well, right? And so, as much as I love my kids, and when I say my kids, I mean those kids that are in that program because I have kids too. So, as much as I love them, I always have to remember that I'm still married and we still have kids. So, I still have a family that deserves just as much time, if not more, than them. I always like to say that it's not really about me. I have an incredible team that helps to keep this work going. It's my team that ensures that everything continues to run like a well-oiled machine. Because of them, I get to do what I do. Because of them, whether I'm here or not here, things continue. And so I first like to applaud them, but I'm a good time manager. I manage my schedule very well. I keep a to do list, I keep a calendar, and I keep it organized. I update it every day because I find that regardless of what I deal with at work, I have to be able to unplug from work to be able to plug into my family every day. And your family doesn't just need a piece of you, they need all of you, and that's important. And so you can't have 40% of you left at work because 40% of you're at home physically, but you're still thinking about the situation that you was dealing with earlier or the kid that you connected with earlier. Your family needs all of you. And so you have to be able to unplug from one thing to be able to plug into the next thing.
That is phenomenal advice. That is phenomenal advice and something to help sustain a long-term relationship, even outside of the work that we do day to day as well. Now, you actually hit on the key point regarding your team. I'm curious to know, with all the great elements that you and your organization have going on, what are some key characteristics you look for when you're actually bringing new additions onto the team as well to help them get acclimated?
First thing we do is so our team we often we do a lot of self-assessments, a lot of personality tests, a lot of traits to identify our strengths and our weaknesses, tests to identify our strengths and our weaknesses. And so when we're bringing someone new onto the team, we go back to those tests and we identify what is our weakness as a team, as individual people, and then we begin to look for people that is their strength. And so I always say that that's how you make a whole team because all of us aren't going to like doing everything. All of us aren't going to be administrative. All of us aren't going to be strong at finances. All of us might not be the greatest people, you know. And so whatever it is that we find our weaknesses are, that's the first thing we're looking for on a team. And it's kind of interesting because I've interviewed tons of people in my career. And because I've always had that mindset, I've interviewed tons of great people in my career that would be great employees in somebody's company. But in the position that I'm looking for at that moment, we're specifically looking for whatever your strengths are. Is it our weakness? Because if you have those same strengths, that's not going to push us to the next level. Does that make sense?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Being able to elevate by actually filling the gaps, right? Not
Yeah.
those exactly like-minded, but somebody who may be a little polar opposite to bring about some additional contrast. So, nah, great perspective there. I want to talk a little bit about a heart story, man. Tell me about what happened at skate night, man. The surprise that you all did for a young man.
Oh yeah, you did your research. You did your research. So we were blessed during the Christmas season by a local organization that was just looking to give some money away, really. And so I'm very sensitive to the needs of our community. And I always tell our staff that whatever it is that we're trying to decide, whatever it is that we are trying to do, we always have to put our clients first. We always have to be students first. We can't be us first. So if we're making a decision where we come first, then we know we're making the wrong decision. So when they came to us wanting to make this donation, we decided to bless our families. And so we did it by saying that we were going to pay off the bills for as many families as we could during the holiday, excuse me, during the holiday season. We were going to pay off as many of the bills as we could during the holiday season. So what we did, we had a lot of families that were in need. So I created this application and to my chagrin, 100% of our families completed the application. Uh, and so what we decided was we kind of created some tiers where we chose five families that we gave them $5,000 each. And then we had 10 families that we gave $2,500 each. And then we had some families that we gave $1,000 each. And everybody that was left, we just gave them $200 gift cards. And I shouldn't say just because I don't want to minimize it, because it was all big. And then the way we did it, because I didn't want to, we wanted to be responsible with the funds that were given to our organization. So we had the families that were chosen, they had to provide us with their bills, and we paid those bills directly. And what we found was that we had people that hadn't paid their rent in 2 or 3 months, or we had one person whose electricity bill was over $2,000,
Hmm.
not because she wasn't working, but the amount that, because when I looked at the bill, she was paying about $400 a month, but the bill was like $500 a month. And
Hmm.
so she was never paying enough, but she was always paying what she had, which means she was always going to be at a deficit, you know. But this is also a parent who's a single parent, but she had 8 kids in the home, all by the same father, but the father was incarcerated,
Hmm.
you know. So we just wanted to be a blessing to our families, and they didn't know this when they came to skate night, so that's what made it even more special, because when they came we presented it as if it was going to be a special family night that we were doing. They were able to skate with their families for free, but then when they got there we had this Christmas tree with cards on it. And so that kind of made it even more special for them to know that we do care, like we see you, we understand, even though your situation might not be the same as my situation, but we're all in this fight together, you
Hmm.
know. And so that's really what it was about. It's kind of trying to provide wraparound services because you can't just support the son and expect that everything is always going to be good. Because if there are other issues in the home, we're only with the son 3 hours a week, unless we're doing a field trip. So if they're still if they need counseling or if they need food or if they need their rent paid, then it's going to be hard for the kid to focus on his educational needs because there are other things. It's like there's a theorist by the name of Abraham Maslow. And Abraham Maslow said that before you can focus on anything, anything, you have to get the basic needs met. You have to have somewhere to live. You have to have food. You have to have water. You have to have your basic needs met. So before you can bloom, you got a Maslow, is what I like to say.
I love it. I love it. The biggest piece I took away from that is you all truly provide a village to support the whole collective household. And oftentimes in other settings or arenas, these are things that get overlooked.
Mm.
Now little Jace is getting in trouble because he appears to be disrespectful because he's laying down, but we don't realize he didn't really have a place to sleep last night, right? Or it's the winter, but he doesn't have heat going on. So this is why he may be a little bit, disrespectful or flustered at that point in time. So again, I just sincerely appreciate you all taking the time to really pay attention to the details and then feed into that and really create a village to support the community in which you support. Another way that I know you all are supporting communities is in the form of scholarships. Tell me why scholarships are so vital for your organization to be able to be storage for the next generation.
Man, scholarships is so important because we focus hard. 100% of our kids graduate high school, and 100% of them transition to college, trade school, or the military. The problem is we can get them into school, but if they don't have the money to pay for school, that creates another challenge. And we've been able to grow our scholarship program. I remember 9 or 10 years ago, the first year we gave a scholarship, we were only able to give $250 each. But then I created this strategic plan. I said, every year we're going to give more. We're going to get bigger and we're going to give more. And so first year we did $250 each, and the next year we did $500 each, and then we went to about $1,000 each, and then we got to the point where we were able to give $5,000 scholarships. And then I said, that's really not good enough because these schools give these kids, so we give the money directly to the school, right, to make sure that their needs are met. But as a college graduate, that after those school fees are paid, they give you that refund check. And unfortunately, a lot of our kids aren't wise enough to say, let me just put that in the bank just in case next semester I need some money. And so we stopped doing that and we started buying those prepaid college scholarships so that the tuition is just fully paid for and the funds are only used on tuition, if that makes sense. Which means now when we're providing a scholarship, we're paying for their first 2 years of college, which is even bigger to me. And I'm most proud of that because we're able to say, you know what, if you go to a state college or university, your tuition is paid for by our program. Like that stressor is off. And I truly believe that they deserve it because we're talking about kids that was on a path that they might not have graduated high school. Um, and so to get them to that point where not only have they graduated high school, but they've been accepted to college and they want to go to college and they want to do something with themselves in their life. So I think that's big.
Talk about redefining trajectory, nah, to the T. Nah, that's beautiful. And to your point, yes, and I'll say we, as a prior college students, we think that that refund is free money God just blessed us with until we get that bill years down the lane and we're mature and understand that that is not what it is. So I love the fact that there's hands-on, knowledge and expertise that comes with it for them to be able to see it, but also just preparing them to propel to be propelling them to be more intentional going forward with those funds as well. So as we get ready to wrap up, I have a few last questions for you. Think about long-term vision, right? Looking forward to the future. What are some goals that you are working on expanding your impact towards?
We're always looking to serve more kids, right? So that's number one goal. We're always trying to figure out how do we serve more kids. We don't want to serve more kids with less though, right?
Mm,
So everything we do is free to kids. And so we were able a couple years ago, we took 25 kids to Washington D.C. completely free for 4 days.
mm,
That's the type of thing we do. And so we don't want to just say, you know what, we can just take this money and serve more kids. But then if you're having to impose a cost on families, that doesn't work either. So the number one goal is always about how do we serve more kids, but to be able to do that, how do we increase our funding to be able to serve more kids? And then the more funding we get, the more opportunities and new experiences that we create for our kids. My team always jokes and say, if somebody gave me $1, I'm gonna stretch it, and it's gonna feel like $10,000. It's just I'm that guy, so I'm always open to any amount of money anybody is able to donate to us because we're going to stretch it to create new opportunities and experiences for these kids to be able to think differently about their life and their future.
Yeah, spot on. Well, that actually leads me to my next question. So, how can local individuals, businesses, anybody of that nature support you through donations or partnerships? What does that process look like for your organization?
We're open to it all, donations and partnerships. It starts literally by just going to our website, www.gqtampa.com, because people are able to give directly to our organization. We are a 501c3 tax uh, uh, charitable organization, so people can claim their donations on their taxes. But we're also looking for partnerships because that create helps us to create these experiences for kids. I don't like to really say field trips because the experiences we create is more than a field trip. It really is an experience for them where when they leave that experience, they're thinking new thoughts about their life and their future. But it's the partnerships that we create that helps to make that come true, if that makes sense.
100%. And talking about partnerships, my last question as we close out. How has After School HQ provided support and help you streamline elements of your organization?
So I would say that After School HQ has been a tremendous blessing to us, specifically in reducing the amount of paperwork that we do or use. Because prior to us using them, and this is our first school year using them, but prior to that, everything was paper and pencil. And now we've created these QR codes where the kids at the beginning or the end of every session, they're able to scan it to do the survey, and all of the data goes straight to one centralized location. That's huge for us. But then, number two, even when it comes time to grant reporting or just reporting how many kids we've served or how are they responding, we can go to one spot to get all of that information. For me, that's the biggest help. For my staff, they love the reduction in paperwork. For me, when it's time for me to write the reports, I just appreciate going to one spot and not having to spend too much time counting or trying to disaggregate data because it's just there and done for us.
Awesome, man. And my very last question. Obviously, we know you're extremely knowledgeable. You're tenured working with the school system to now being the executive director of this phenomenal organization. Somebody that's looking to start an organization, right? If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what is one piece of wisdom that you would provide them to continue to help them stay encouraged through all the nuances that come with wearing all these hats as well?
One of the things specifically people that are in the school district, I've learned, especially now that I've left the local vision doing so many great and wonderful things. And the only thing that stops them is fear, the fear of leaving their comfort zone. And I would encourage anybody that has a dream of doing anything great to not allow fear to stop them, but create a plan instead that they're able to actualize by putting step by step together. What do I need to do? What do I need to accomplish? So that they can make that move, but they make a calculated move. They make an educated move, but they don't just stifle themselves because of the fear.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. And anybody that wants to follow your organization to see all the great work you're doing, can you provide us any form of social media handle so they can follow you as well?
They can follow us on Instagram at GQ Tampa, and they can follow us on Facebook at Gentleman's Quest.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Sincerely, After School HQ family, again, this has been Marcus and Mr. Tavis. Thank you for taking some time to hear us out, and we look forward to connecting here soon.